Recording in progress.
Aloha, mahalo. Welcome with love and thanks for attending our audio interview. Today we have a very special in-depth interview with one of the living legends and world treasures on our planet, someone who is an expert in the mystery of forgiveness. This is Pat Crosby from iloveforgiveness.com, where this audio can be found, and I welcome you to our interview series of outstanding people who live their life and walk their talk to make our world a better place. We welcome live from the big island of Hawaii, Auntie Meha-Alani. And Auntie has been teaching the wisdom of her ancestors for quite a while in many wonderful places of the world. So Auntie, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Oh, mahalo, and aloha. And let me just say it's Auntie Meha-Alani, Ka'iwi Koma'o Kekua Okalani, Henry.
And
it's a mouthful.
Is there a translation for all of that beautiful string of sounds, Auntie?
Well, Meha-Alani, which is a name given to me prior to my birth, was a name chosen by my grandfather. And Meha-Alani means in his way of meaning it, he meant it as one who brings light to the world. Meha-Alani, most commonly known by those who know the Hawaiian language, Meha-Alani means that phase of, or the brightness of the moon. So it's the Hawaiian full moon. So Meha-Alani, because my grandfather received messages prior to my birth, he knew that I would be, that my purpose in this lifetime would be as a messenger for the ancestors, so messenger teacher. So in other words, one who brings light, acknowledgement, etc.
Did you yourself know that from the time that you became conscious as a young child?
Pretty much. Pretty much. And Ka'iwi Kuamo'o Kekua Okalani means the lineage that I'm from, which means Ka'iwi Kuamo'o Kekua Okalani means the backbone strength of the heavenly chief. Yeah, that's all entwined in that spirituality, many lives, many karmic effects, if you will. Many of the ancestors who wanted to be sure that they had another messenger here, things of this sort.
So were you consciously or specifically trained from the time you were a young child, or was this just part of the way your family was since you were born into this particular family?
Actually, it's both. Acknowledging the purpose, the kiakahi, meaning the purpose, was already a part of it. But then having some of like my grandfather and others, which also included my mother, was helpful in bringing all of this consciousness, into this lifetime. Yeah.
Were you within your own culture at that time considered a special child, so to speak, if that's the right language, or was this just kind of private knowledge that was held within your own family? I ask because we have a lot of people who are being tapped on the shoulder now to be messengers, and sometimes in the Western culture, remember hearing messages as a child, but there wasn't a cultural awareness that this was okay to do. So I was wondering what your experience was like growing up in your time and place.
Well, because I grew up in a time and place where the missionary influences came to our islands, um, it was not publicly. It was not publicly uh, the the purpose, the kiakahi as a messenger, etc., was not made publicly known. Let's say, except within family and the village.
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you were on the Big Island from child.
Right, right. The Big Island of Hawaii in the district of Puna,
Mhm.
which that in itself, uh, for those of us who know our islands and who know the locations, you do know that the district of Puna is very sacred to the goddess Pele, to our fire goddess Pele. It's also remained, how shall we say, in a remote sort of bubble, if you will, for a very long time. So where we were not a part of, say, the metropolitan um, part of Hawaii, meaning Honolulu, meaning places like Maui, including Kauai. We were very much here on the Big Island and in a pocket uh, away from the light of the world, if you will.
And that's right where the volcano is.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm. And Pele, for those who don't know, is the goddess of fire, if I'm saying that correctly, Auntie.
Yeah, she is. She's the goddess of fire. She's also the goddess of creation and cleansing, and you know, we've always had this creative life force, here, especially in this district, that makes it very unique from all the other places, all the other sacred places here in all our islands.
So is it correct to talk about your work as Ho'oponopono, Auntie?
Um, because of the different models of Ho'oponopono, and because of the fact that um, this the teachings that I do is more of the ancient. It comes more from the roots, if you will, of our Hawaiian culture. Um, it is Ho'oponopono Keala. So Keala means the path. So there's that description in it then that really does set it apart from the other two models known as Ho'oponopono.
Would you care to go into explaining those other models and why you are on this particular path?
Okay. Well, for one thing, just to let people know, I do have a history page on my website that really does get right into it. And I know that we are on limited time, so I will just briefly say that since I already have it written up on my website, that of the three models, Ho'oponopono Keala is the one that is rooted in the aloha spirit. So where that aloha spirit, which exists, which is so acknowledged here in our islands, um, the existence of that and this teaching go hand in hand with that. So that is to say that aloha spirit, aloha meaning love, love energy, love spirit, love unconditionally, love or aloha, the word aloha, which is so dominant in our language. It's usually the first word that a visitor will hear and learn very quickly once they're in our islands, of course. That word itself, which resonates, which is said to resonate into the universe as a prayer, as a chant, without all of the rest of the attachments therein, um, resonates out into the universe and brings that light of love back to whoever is saying the word aloha, whether they know what the full meaning of that is or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just knowing that part of the puzzle, if you will, that piece lets you know then that this teaching, this particular teaching of Ho'oponopono Keala, making right more right the path, is rooted in the Aloha Spirit, means that all of its focus, its model, its teachings, if you will, is rooted in love. So love is the dominant theme in this teaching. So when you mention something, for instance, like forgiveness, and that one is known as a teacher of forgiveness, etc., when you're speaking in terms of myself and as a teacher messenger for the ancestors, we are speaking more in terms of love. Love is the premise. And when you're in that kind of mindset, if you will, then forgiveness and all of the rest of it that goes with love is already in there.
Auntie's website, for those of you who would like to look it up, is Aloha Spirit Auntie, and that's AUNTY, AlohaSpiritAuntie.com. And the teachings tab that you'll see at the top of her website goes in depth into these different systems that Auntie was just referencing. So, Auntie, I was doing a little Google search today of forgiveness after you and I had a brief conversation last night, and I was quite amazed to see all these different definitions and perspectives on forgiveness, which gave me a new appreciation for what you have just expressed about forgiveness. Well, I'm going to let you say it. I'm going to ask my question as best I can, but hope that you will clarify it. That, if you would just talk on forgiveness as, what would you call it, a manifestation of love, or an aspect of love, or the heart of love?
Absolutely. That and all and more. Absolutely. When we think in terms of forgiveness, we see the word forgiveness as for saving. So if there was to say, if we were to replace the word forgiveness, it would be with for saving. Okay, so what are we saving? Well, we're saving the love. We're talking about the reconnection. If you have that, if you understand and you practice, say, reconnecting self to love, then the forsaving of self or the forgiving of self is already in there. In other words, it takes that rather than to say, be stuck in that model of forgiving, we're saying go to the next level, which means reconnect to that next level of forsaving, which reconnects to that level of love. So it's all about the love.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have that love that you reconnect to, which is our divinity, after all, then everything else that you might have been, say, stuck in is no longer there. Is no longer there because you've lifted yourself back into the light. That love, that light, that oftentimes gets forgotten when we're in the place of thinking that we need to be forgiven. And then when we think in terms of forgiving, it brings us back to that place of, okay, what are we asking for forgiveness for? What is it? And then that places us back into guilt and human trauma and drama and what we Hawaiians refer to as pilikia. Pilikia meaning trauma and drama. And when you get into that kind of psychological mumbo jumbo, excuse the expression, but that adds to the confusing state of being that you just get all twisted up into, and love is totally, forgotten if it's even connected to. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, and I'm thinking in my own history and also people I've worked with as a healer, people get into the space of love, but then we have all that, I will call it, I guess, the garbage or the baggage that we've all accumulated.
Attachments, yeah, it's the human attachment.
Sometimes called our dark side or our shadow side. So how do you deal with all of that when that comes up?
Well, then that's when we need to recognize who we truly are. We need to, in other words, recognize that we are divine beings. Let's not just get stuck in, say, the darkness of the human, but let's recognize the wholeness of who we are. And that will always lead you back to the divinity that we are all spirit and that we are all from this light and that we just simply need to reconnect to the light that's already within us.
Well, this brings up one of the questions that was pre-submitted by email from Audrey in Vermont, who's a retired marine biologist. And she writes, I would be interested if Auntie could address areas in which guilt has worked its way into our inner life and ways that self-forgiveness concerning such things can be brought in to replace it. And then she goes on, if you care to go into this part of her question. These areas would include what happened to Lemuria and what happened in the Hawaiian Islands at the time of the European takeover, and what happens every day with new compromises or acquiescence to the powers that be.
Mm-hmm. There again, that's recognizing, okay? That's only recognizing a portion of self, and that is the part of the human trauma and drama, okay? That's not recognizing the fact that we, as spirit beings, we have this choice as to how we want to spend our moments. Do we want to spend it mostly in that human trauma and drama? Then it can, that it's that human trauma and drama that will keep us disconnected, if you will. It'll keep us more connected into the human trauma and drama to where it becomes not only depressing, but we lose the light. We lose the light and we are so absorbed in the darkness. So yes, that's going to create more of that lightness of energy. So we need to understand that we have a choice. We always have choice.
I know myself when I've been stuck in a dark place, it's endless darkness.
Endless darkness.
Yeah, I've spent 20-some years studying different spiritual ways, and before that, psychotherapy ways to get back into the light.
Sure.
And at this stage of my life as a baby boomer, more often than not, I'm either able to hold on to the light or quickly get back into it if I lose it through the drama, things that go on. But that's been a long, ongoing study for me, Auntie. And so when I know you give a lot of workshops and teaching and counseling, how do you help people when they're stuck in that place or when they're on their process of learning to hold on to their own light?
Well, it needs to be described to them. Okay? This is what comes through the workshops. Oftentimes It's so interesting because just 2 days ago, I did a workshop with a group of women from Germany, and there was only three of them that understood some English, one that understood English really well, and then, of course, the translator. So again, you're working with people who speak a whole different language, which really adds some extra spiciness, if you will, to the light. And so that was one of their questions. This woman brought up the same thing about, well, what do you do when you're caught in the she wanted to make a change in her life, in her career, and everything, but she just didn't want to be struggling with it. She didn't want to have the fears anymore. So how does she get through that? You know. So with that question in mind, of course, I I hear the question and I immediately know that from a human standpoint, it's not for me to answer that. So I definitely keep the way open for the ancestors to come in and answer that. And they did by asking her the question. And here is the question: who is in charge? Who is in charge? And this is what they asked her. They asked her through the interpreter who was in charge of her life. Because even before she answered that, which she didn't understand the question at first, but while she was trying to struggle to answer that, the other part of that came in where they said to her, we don't want to speak to you. We want to speak to the person in charge of your life. Because to speak to you means you're so caught up in the human part of it, you wouldn't hear us anyway. We want to speak to the one in charge of your life.
So would you call that the soul, the higher soul?
Yeah, the interpreter, of course, looked at me, and I said, yes, that's exactly what they're asking here. Mm-hmm. So I said, you need to ask this of her. And when she was asked this, she just, then she started laughing, as did the interpreter, because the ancestors were saying to her, we do not wish to speak to you. Mm-hmm. You are too human. Mm-hmm. We wish to speak to the one in charge of your life. In other words, we're asking for your spirit to step up here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is the person in charge. And where is that? Where is that entity? See, she had gotten so involved in her human traumas and dramas, etc., that this connection with her spirit, her spiritual side, wasn't there. Wasn't something that was readily available to her because it wasn't a part of her for so long. And there's so many of this that happens time and time again. So they were right to ask her who is in charge and to tell her that they do not wish to speak to her because she's too stuck in the human stuff. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wanted to speak to her spirit. Where is her spirit side? That's what they were asking.
Mm-hmm. Now, many traditions have ways for people to remember and reconnect and live from their spirit side. Are there special ways that you do in the way you teach and from your tradition?
Sure. Again, that's a part of it because of the fact that the ancestors are so much a part of it. So they bring in the moment-to-moment aspects of things in the now. In the now, which is the same as they have done from way back when. The thing about it is the human behavior. Human behavior doesn't change. Mm-hmm. Human behavior, and now just evidence of that came through even evidence from the fact that these were women from Germany. So human behavior doesn't even change with the country or the language.
I've
Yeah.
been reading a lot of ancient history books and watching ancient history documentaries on late night YouTube and internet.
Mhm.
So it's been quite amazing. All the civilizations, it seems like the same dramas happen.
It's the same drama and drama. It's just different names, maybe different countries, different languages, but it's all the same thing. Basically, it's the same pattern. And I've said this before, even in my classes, sometimes the message will come through at the start of the classes that before it even starts, we name 5 patterns. Usually it's about 5 patterns, and I have everyone participate in naming the 5 traumas and dramas, the title of the subjects, let's say, even before we get started in the class.
Oh, so this would be people's favorite soap operas that they create?
The stories we tell ourselves. So it doesn't really matter even what language it is. What I found that matters or that makes the breakthrough as quickly as it does, I feel, is the language, for instance. Now, with me, of course, as it is appropriate, I speak in terms of yes, the English as well as the Hawaiian. Okay, and I use the Hawaiian words as is appropriate for the subject matters or what depth we're at. For instance, just saying aloha and letting people know what the depth of that word means. Um, 5 years from now, I could get an email from someone, and say they're going through maybe a crisis, and I'll just zip them back an email and said, "What happened to the aloha?" And that just joggles the memory.
I'm thrilled you said that because I'm thinking of all the people in the Waikiki nightclubs who are going there kind of as a so-called tourist. They don't maybe consciously know, but I think it's wonderful. They're sending out boomerang prayers. Aloha, aloha.
Exactly. We love it. Love it. We absolutely love it. Like I said, it doesn't matter whether you really understand the depth of that word or not.
Your soul knows. It's the language of the soul.
Exactly. The soul goes with the language of the universe. The language of the universe is rhythm, is energy, is sound. Absolutely. Before words. As a matter of fact, I often let people know that in our Hawaiian communication, the living language, etc., that verbal speaking, verbal communication was considered the fourth element of communication for us as a cultural people. Yeah, the first, and the reason for that is, as my grandfather used to say, that is one of the reasons why our living language, the Hawaiian language, is has very few words. Has very few words because it was not the first method of communication for our culture.
Well, that's very interesting because in the scriptures from India, which tradition I studied for 27 years, speech is also considered the fourth language.
Absolutely. Words had a way of disconnecting one from spirit. It was taught that, and also that, according to my grandfather, too many words confuse the mind.
We certainly see that in the media today, don't we?
Oh, lots of it. Absolutely, lots of it. Yes.
So,
absolutely.
Could you touch on how you use chanting and the Hawaiian language in your work, and do you use it for healing as well as teaching? Or?
Oh, absolutely. As an example, just the other evening, I do the moon ceremonies. full moon ceremonies when I'm on this island and here in Puna. And the full moon ceremonies all begin with this chanting. And it's very interesting because I have people that come from all over the world that know about this and will, work it out in their vacation plans to be on the island, at times when they're pretty sure I'm going to be here by, sending me an email, etc. But anyway, um, it's interesting how they may not understand the words that I'm chanting that's coming through the ancestors, but they go into the space, as they said, they feel it in their heart. It's in their body. They feel it in their cells, and they find that the chanting, some people who are familiar with chanting from other languages find that that vibrational energy is all one, and it's all the universe.
And it's also said that chanting can actually change your DNA too.
Oh, yeah. It sparkles the cells. Oh, of course.
It's very interesting. When I spent time in New Zealand a number of years ago with some of the elders there, I was chanting some of the ancient Sanskrit chants for them, and they were chanting some of their chants for me. And at one point, one of the elders stopped, and he said, "What was that word?" And I repeated that particular line. He said, "Oh, we have the..." He said, "What does that mean?" So I gave the English meaning. He said, "Oh, we've got the same words in our language. It means the same thing." And
yes. And when you think about it, science, in fact, has backed this up recently through a DVD, and it was called The Journey of Man. Journey of Man, and it's the National Geographic study, and they did the film and everything on it, but it was a study on the single DNA. And that they found after a 10-year study and research that we all come from this single DNA, and it goes back to a tribe that still exists, although they are a small group, but there's this tribe that exists in Africa, and they're called the Click tribe. And they speak, their language is like the dolphins. Click language, they call it. And their sound, and it sounds more than it is words. But they click when they verbalize something.
I'm thrilled to tell our listeners here that you have on your website a whole page of chanting, and people can hear that.
Oh, definitely.
Again, it's alohaspiritauntie.com, and the very last tab on the right, Pono Na Mea.
Yeah, and Pono Na Mea.
Yes, I'm going to have a few of those excerpts playing on the tape here when we sound edit it, but I'm looking forward to being immersed in these waves of sound that you have put on your website, Auntie.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, and also I do audio where they can, let's see, I believe it's on my classes page or events page, one of those two pages that explain the different audio that they can download that I've made available. They can, the information is on there about how they can obtain some of the different audios on excerpts and things that I take from my classes or people that have asked me questions, those certain subjects that I'm speaking on. So there's like about 6 different titled audio discs available.
How wonderful. You have a wonderful website. I feel like I'm back over there on the Big Island myself, sitting in the warm pools with you here.
Yes, and we just love the warm pools. I call it the office.
Yes, I saw that on your website. That's delightful. For those who haven't been there yet, would you like to describe what the warm pools are, the warm pond?
Oh, well, in all of Polynesia, and in fact, pretty much maybe in most areas of the world, um, there really is. This is the only place that I would say that has easy access to the elements or the energies of our goddesses, our goddess energies that are found in this warm pool. And this pool is bordered by by forest on three sides, and then the one side is the ocean. So ocean water feeds into this pool, and this pool is fresh water aquifers from beneath this pool that comes up through the ground, as well as the heavenly waters from the rains that come into this pool. So it's what people would say a mixture of both salt and fresh water that fills this pool, and it's probably maybe 5 Olympic size. You know, the size of it is quite large, huge. And in this pool, we know this pool is having the energies of three of the goddesses. So that would be the goddess of the ocean, saltwater goddess, which is Namaha Okekai. She's the goddess of the ocean, Namaha Okekai. And of course, I have this on the website too that explains this a little more. So there's just enough salt in this water. There is also, of course, the fresh water, and the water is heated by Pele. So our goddess of the volcano, her energies is also found in this water. So it makes it just a really unique pool of water that's being fed by these energies, by this goddess energy, every day, continuously. And my grandfather used to speak about these goddess energies that nurture you. So there's three of these elements that's in the pool, and then the fourth element is the human element.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it makes it perfect in the sense that we are part of the rebirth of self. In other words, this pool has all the elements of, say, the womb, the human womb, just enough salt water, just enough fresh water, just enough heat to replicate, if you will, the womb. So when the fourth element, yourself, is also in this pool, you've now become the human element that is birthed, that is embraced and birthed by this pool. So it's you are consciously aware of, you know, the rejuvenation that's occurring in your body. Because let's face it, you know, we're mostly water anyway. Our makeup is mostly water anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So to be a part of this element, this room, is to, as the ancestors, the ancient ones were saying, this is this room that rejuvenates you, and that you are part of your birth, your reconnection, only this time you're conscious of it, and you're in this human form. So this is the beauty of this healing waters that's here, so unique to this island, and in particular to only the Puna district. So in all of Polynesia, you cannot get this. This is right here, only in the Puna district.
And that's your home office. I think all the people who work
my home office.
This be thrilled with this new elevation of the concept of home office.
Oh, I never have to decorate it. The palm trees are all in place. Puffy blue, skies, the clouds, everything right in place. I just show up.
Cleaned by Mother Nature. There's a big stone wall that blocks off the strong waves of the ocean. So very.
Oh yeah, so the water is always nice and calm, except when it's you know, at the how should we say, at the change in the moon phase, you know, then sometimes the water is quite high.
Oh, really? Is that where you do your full moon ceremonies?
Yes.
Oh, how exquisite. I'm going to be thinking of you forever after during full moon.
Yeah, there you go. Well, more than that, you need to come back down here.
Well, I'm ready for that.
There you go.
Being at home.
And come float in the pool.
Well, I'm remembering when I would go in the warm baths there, the warm pool. Every sort of healing was going on.
Oh, yeah.
It was just delightful. You saw people doing all kinds of healing with each other in
Absolutely.
sacred waters. So,
Absolutely. Well, and you kind of consider that, you know, in all of Polynesia, this is it. Even in amongst our 8 islands here in the Hawaiian chain, it's here. It's here in Puna because of our energy from the volcano, of course. LA, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for all that new expanded appreciation for what is available here on the Big Island of Hawaii. Now, I want to interject a question here from Simone in New York. She's a reflexologist and a paralegal. And her question is, can an entire family only attract losers? Is there really such a thing as a family curse? And if so, how do you remove it? And the second part of her question is financial blessing only for some people? Thank you.
Oh, well, let's take the last question first. Financial blessing. Yes, that's only for certain people. Yes, who believe that. Yes, absolutely. I personally don't believe in that. So therefore, abundance reigns on me. Let it happen. Absolutely. But true. I mean, you know, joking aside, it really, again, returning back to the divinity and the light, okay? When we say that only certain things occur for certain people, we have to look at the power of choice. If that is the choice that we choose to believe in, then yes, we've given that power. Absolutely. Absolutely. But we choose the fact that we all have the choice that we can choose. Back in the early 90s, Pele with lava flow was coming down the East Rift, and of course uh, it had destroyed many of the homes, taken many of the homes out in this area, and
geography.
Slowly into the town.
It's directly downhill from the lava flow. I just want to set the for those who have. Okay.
So Uncle Robert's house was one of the last homes that was in the path of the lava flowing downhill. And everyone else, you know, they had evacuated everyone else except for, I believe, Uncle Robert and some members of the family there. And he, as well as the family, as well as some other families, because it's not only him that it happened to, but at any rate, they stayed on the land, and the lava flow came down and came around the borders of his Ainam, of his land, and did not destroy his property, but went around it and then met up in front, the roadway up in front of his house, which is across the street from his house, joined up again, the lava flow did, and then continued on its downward path to the ocean. So Uncle Robert's place was spared. always been very respectful of Pele. Same with my grandfather. That happened the same thing to my grandfather back in the 1960s eruption here in Puna. Same thing where the lava came flowing down the hill, and my grandfather was busy mending his nets, and he did not want to vacate the property with the rest of everyone else. And because he had a deep respect for Pele, that deep respect meant that if Pele wanted to take his property, then so be it, because he respected the fact that um, it all belonged to Pele anyway. So as it turned out, she didn't. She did the same thing. She came down with the lava flow, joined up in front of his border of his house, and flowed flowed down into the ocean. Continued that downward flow into the ocean.
It's very dramatic visit. I stayed with Uncle Robert and his family, I think 3 days, and I stayed in a little guest cabin that they built on top of the lava flow between his house and the ocean. His house was spared, plus the sacred garden behind his house.
Oh, yes.
All the healing herbs that come down from the wisdom of the people there.
Yep.
This lesson the world is sorely needing now, isn't it, Auntie? Give respect to the elements, to the land, and the respect is two-way. Just like the word aloha, you send it out, it comes back. And
absolutely. These are evidence. These are evidence that so long as we are connected to our divinity, to our spiritual greatness, if you will, we're in a good place, you know. So then, therefore, our experiences that wrinkle in the universe, if you will only give you back that which is of like energy. So if that like energy is fearful and always condemning of self and mankind and fears and regulated to trauma and drama, well, it's that energy that's going to come back to you in the same way or worse. Or worse. And we know that man has, you know, the limitations here in this dimension, you know. We're supposed to, in fact, the saying that my grandfather used to always say was, hey, make aloha, meaning bring forth the blessings that create aloha nui, meaning create more of that greatness of love. And therein is your experiences. So having pilikia, you know, pilikia, that trauma and drama stuff, is returned to you time and time again, so long as that is the story, that is the place, that is the energy that you keep yourself stuck in. It means then you're not the person in charge anymore. You're allowing mass consciousness to be in charge of your life. So, you know, it's about reconnecting to the spirit within, to your greatness as the one in charge, you know? It's as simple as that.
That's very scary to think of mass consciousness driving our lives.
Absolutely. You know, it's so again, it's to ask yourself whenever you find yourself stuck in the trauma and drama or believing in the power of negativity, let's say, to think in terms of that a whole family can be caught up in this trauma and drama, you know, that says that this whole family are a bunch of losers, you know. I would say this: if every member in that family has chosen to fall into that kind of energy and to believe that they are, cursed by this losing karma, then yeah, they're absolutely right. They are cursed.
Because they accept that.
Absolutely.
And on the other hand, we see families like yours and Uncle Robert's who did not accept that the lava flow would burn them up and cover them.
Exactly.
And that didn't happen.
No, no. Evidence are with us every day.
Mm-hmm.
Every day, the evidence are with us. It gives you the choice. There are many choices on the table, so to speak. According to my grandfather, there's all these choices on the table, all these delicious dishes for experiences.
I love that. Well, it's interesting. I've been drawn down to South America the last couple of years to the sacred sites in Peru, Machu Picchu, and Lake Titicaca, and
Yes.
got involved with people who've been studying the 2012 prophecies from the Mayans, and part of that prophecy is talked about the uh, connection of the eagle and the condor, the eagle being the great bird of North American continent and the condor the equivalent for the South.
Yes, I was invited to the grandmother's circle with that.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, yes, it was exquisite. I'll leave that to people to Google to learn more about that. But very interesting because one of the definitions of the coming together of the eagle and condor that I particularly reverberated with is the current North American civilization being very technologically based, and the South American, at least the indigenous part of it, still being the way you've been talking about, connected with the elements and the land and being in harmony and working with that instead of thinking one must conquer it. So coming together of the eagle and condor is merging the best of both traditions.
Oh, gosh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Especially when you think in terms of we're all in the same canoe. Mm-hmm. It's just that some of us have forgotten how to paddle.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm.
That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us are, we've even forgot that we have a paddle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm totally curious. Do you care to share a little bit about the grandmother circle and what?
Oh, yes. This was let's see. I believe it was 2005 that I had just completed some classes in Australia. In fact, there I was invited to attend a grandmother's circle with the Aborigine women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and since I was an indigenous person, that they had, it's really interesting that they had heard of my coming. So I'm not sure how that happened, say, at one level. I did find out from one of the granddaughters that my coming was stated at a fire 7 years previous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it seemed like there was the fire circle that takes place, if I remember right, every 7 years.
Mm.
Yeah, every 7 years is a fire circle. And it's made up of the grandmothers, great-grandmothers, and grandmothers, the various levels of women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Women. And they spoke about the woman who will come from Fire Island.
Ah.
LA,
Big Island.
There it is. There it is. And this was a granddaughter that spoke, excellent English. In fact, she was educated, college and all of that. And she, when we were talking, she mentioned that, it was great to meet the woman from Fire Island.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I said, oh, where is that woman?
Often don't know who we are. This is an observed phenomena.
Yeah, she looked at me and she said, well, are you not you're from Fire Island, yes? Are you not?
That could be a little joke for people from New York because Fire Island is one of the vacation islands off of Long Island outside of New York City.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Well, for here in the Pacific,
Right,
the only fire island per se is this island.
right.
On the Big Island. But I don't. You live. I live in this district with Goddess Pele,
Hmm.
the fire goddess. But I never think of her per se as really it's such a unique thing in a sense, only because um, you know we, my family, myself, we've always lived, you know, here in the shadow of Pele, so to speak. You know, so she's like, oh yeah, she's the neighbor down the street.
So you're restating one of the greatest spiritual truths, which is we are all created in the divine light, but
Exactly.
we forgot that. So it's like, who, me? Oh.
Exactly. So it was such a chuckle to me, when she described it in that way.
This was in Australia.
Yes, this was in Australia, and the women had come together. Well, it's also families, and these were women, not just Aborigine, but other women in the South Pacific, down in those islands, Fiji, New Zealand, Maori, all of these women in the South Pacific Islands. Yeah.
I have a little anecdote about that. I'm guessing it was maybe 1997 thereabouts. I was camping for 10 days in Uluru, or in English, the Ayers Rock. It's the very center of Australia and considered the most sacred place on that continent. And
Mhm. Mhm.
I was 2 years before I learned about the internet and got online in 1999 in all places of Kathmandu. But 97, I had hardly even any concept of what the internet was, and my friends will laugh since I now have 64 blogs. But anyway,
Oh dear.
going back then, before I discovered the magic of the internet, I was sitting out in Uluru at a picnic table there with a Aborigine person, too young to be an elder, but we were chatting, and he said, "Oh yes," he started telling me what was going on with indigenous elders in North America, where I'm from. So I said, "Well, how do you know all this? I mean, phone calls were still fairly expensive back in that."
Oh yes. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And plus, out in the middle, it's 4 hours flight from Sydney on the coast of Australia's
Sure.
center. So it's really out in the middle of nowhere. So I'm wondering. He said, "Oh no, we've got websites up, and all the indigenous people from all around the world are now communicating each other through the internet." So when you told me you wondered how they knew you were coming, it could be any of the four levels of speech, but certainly on the verbal level, the written and spoken level, the internet is doing a huge job to connect people and get people communicating. Indeed, this very conversation will be floating out in cyberspace within a few hours. And
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
how
Well, it was
inboxes.
really interesting how they were singing. They were chanting and singing. The uh, the Aborigines believe that as long as the song of the land, I think it is, song of the land,
Mm-hmm.
um, is vibrated out into the energy of the universe, that it continues to um, sing life onto the planet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So their one of their purposes for having this fire circle was to bring these ancient thoughts back into the circle, and to keep it alive in the time and space that this event occurs, and to be passed on, to the younger ones as well, you know. And the importance of the grandmothers and the women are because they are the ones that nurture life. So they're the ones that come together to hold this uh, fellowship, this camaraderie, this purpose.
And women also have that extra chromosome that gives them a more comprehensive hookup to the universe.
Yeah, exactly.
The X chromosome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so I was real pleased to be a part of this, and then share the chant, comes from these islands.
Mm-hmm.
And so shared it with them as part of their energy levels for bright vibrational songs, into the universe.
It's the whole concept of being an earth keeper.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting.
And then, of course, then being invited to attend the one in Northern. This was at Big Bear Lake in Southern California. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another meeting of the condor and the eagle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's going to be wonderful to watch over the next few years, watching how all these prophecies actually come into being, and people like you and other elders who have held on to the traditions through thick and thin, and warfare and colonization and all kinds of things, to hold on to that truth till the point where the earth desperately needs it and it's time for it to come back. So,
and to hold this belief system of the light,
mm-hmm.
and love,
mm-hmm.
and divinity.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, because the trauma and drama stuff has given us all, through many lifetimes, more than enough to fill us up with that part of our experiences, So we can see where, it's time to take it now into this next level that so many have been holding on to, holding this light until the masses, as they grow in their awareness, as they grow in their acceptance, to accept the love, to accept their divinity, etc., etc. This is where I feel that many of the indigenous grandmothers, etc., mothers, females, women, have been holding this light.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're also waiting for many of our sisters who sort of got caught up in the human drama and trauma of things, and know now that there is really a better path. There is really a better place to be in, and to place our reconnected values and our powers, and to come back into the light, if you will.
Well, this touches upon one of the submitted questions here by Maria. She's a designer, and she's a mother and a spiritual seeker from St. Louis. And she says, if I have desires and I know I can use my thought and vibration to move towards them,
absolutely.
How do I know that my desires are God desires for my beingness? Thank you, she writes.
Okay, now get ready. You might have to sit in this. Okay? How do we know that the desires that one wants in their life, that one can identify with? Well, first of all, it sounds as if she has some really good, good desires. I mean, it's not a trauma and drama stuff, but it's actually good desires that she's desiring to experience in her life. Do I have that right by her question?
From what I know of Maria, I would say that's right on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the fact that it is of good desires, all right, I would definitely say that comes from the light beings.
Mm-hmm.
Light beings is God, goddesses, which is all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. So yes, the inspiration, it's been said, it has been said that God, goddess, Creator uh, look upon us as those who have chosen to embody ourselves in the physicalness. They look upon us as being able to then experience spiritually as well as physically, to experience many experiences. And therefore, they become a part of those experiences. To the fact that she's wanting better in her life, that this, and she's asking if this inspiration comes from God, Goddess, universe, the creation of all creators, let's say, um, is right on. Because yes, definitely, definitely, the inspiration comes from them, from the God, the goddesses, whoever she wants to call them to be, because they're part, like my mother often says, and my mother changed address, she passed on to spirit, changed form, if you will, changed address about 10 years ago. And her and I have a partnership going to where she's able to experience without the body now. She's able to experience a lot of the experiences that I'm doing because we have this partnership. And it was a partnership made in the conscious ethers. you know? So, a direct identity too, you see.
Well,
so without the body form, she's able to experience, all the greatness that I experience.
Yeah, it's a couple of things immediately come to my mind. My own mother, passed over a few winters back, just new moon before Christmas, and we were like total opposites in our earthly life, and didn't understand too many things. But after she passed over, she came to me, and I'm clairvoyant and clairsentient, so I became aware of her soul presence, and we had the most deep, friendly, heartwarming communication.
Oh.
I had wanted my whole life when she was in her body, but what she said to me was so healing to me. She said, "Oh, when I was in my body, I didn't understand you at all or the work you're doing." I'm in this, and she would be what I would call a very grounded 3D sort of person, And we had this healing series of conversations over about 3 days, and she blessed me, and there was a little financial bequest that came to me, and she said, "I want you to take that money and go buy the computer you need to do your work," because I put all my stuff out on the internet now. And she said, "I just didn't understand in my body what you were doing and the importance of your work, but now I see it." So that was very healing for me, but I also was thrilled for her to know she wasn't always kind of encased in that little cement shell of limited awareness.
Oh, beautiful. Yes, absolutely. Well, all that stuff stays here in this dimension. It doesn't go with them.
I was going to ask you for a great story of forgiveness, but I realized I just revealed my own, didn't I?
Yes, you did. There it is, right there.
Yeah, because
there's the good experience.
Pure soul communication, the love that brought me into incarnation as her daughter, and her holding me in her womb and giving me the doorway to my human existence. That's lost in the morass of third dimensional life, in particular, a civilization that had been, at least when I grew up in the 50s, very entrenched in 3D thinking. And all was gone in an instant, in all the years of strife and non-communication, miscommunication, hard feelings, hurt feelings, all it was just gone because we connected at the very deep, true level of our light and our soul love.
Oh, absolutely. People have asked me that. Do like some people who haven't had a good relationship, let's say with a family member, a loved one, I like to let them know that when they change address, when they go back into their spirit form, all of the stuff for the experiences that they needed to have, all the good they take with them. Anything else that was a part of that stays in this dimension. It doesn't, it doesn't carry over.
That's a great, thrilling relief to know that, isn't it?
Yeah. My mother rallies on that one all the time.
That's interesting because when I started my spiritual journey consciously back in the 80s, someone did my astrological chart, and they said, "Oh, your mother, she is here to keep you from going crazy." I'm kind of paraphrasing what she said. I have like far out spiritual gifts. Anybody who has those type of extra dimensional gifts beyond the third realizes it takes some doing to learn how to live as a sane human being and also embrace and utilize your gifts that you came here to share and express. So my mother, being extremely third dimensional, kept me in line, and now I can appreciate that. Of course, at the time, it just felt like, oh, why is she so harsh and yelling me at all? Greater sole purpose in that. I would call her now like my drill sergeant, getting me ready for, boot camp on planet Earth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's good to know that as they move through their level of evolvement, that we ourselves can look at what was here. What was their experiences while they were here. And can even perhaps appreciate the fact that, well, this is the way they had to do things, or it was all about the level of the experiences. My mother keeps saying it's about involvement for evolvement. Yeah, she always says that. She says, don't forget now. It's all about the involvement for evolvement. And even though that may, we may say, oh my goodness, but why did she have to do it this way, or why did she have to do it that way, or whatever. We need to just again then connect. That's where that connection to the divinity, to that side of ourselves that knows everything. It is that calming effect, is that light that says, well, you may have done it differently, but this is the way, she did it, or that other person did it. Remember, they are, even though they're your mom or your dad or whoever they are also individual spirit entities that need to do their experiences in order to get to the levels they need to be.
And my experience then, when you zoom back from the drama of this dimensional life, you zoom back to the perspective of your soul, light and love, it's like, the lessons you take away are increasing your capacity for compassion and being non-judgmental, being in unconditional love and acceptance and appreciation and gratitude that everything is perfect.
Yes. Oh, yes. To be reminded about that, to click into that, just takes all that sense of, depressed woundedness, It just soothes that and goes, okay, all right, this is a temporary thing here. This is for, the experiences. It's not about whether you agree with it or not, except for the fact that it just simply is. It just simply is, And then we can look at that experience and we can choose to expand on it. We can choose to involve ourselves with it even more until we're just so confused or, so steeped in the trauma and drama of it that, it might take years.
I like what you said about no evolvement without involvement. In other words, we have to get out on the playing field of life, get scratched up, dented, a few broken bones there to learn the lessons. Otherwise, we're just sitting back reading books, and it stays head knowledge, which actually is a big problem on our planet. People having a lot of head knowledge, but not enough heart knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So they do get, caught up in all that confusement. Yes.
In the Sanskrit scriptures, they say words are, they use the word maya, illusion, but more than that, confusing and create chaos when they're not connected with your soul source of light. In other words, when they're just coming from your mind and the mental concepts, or we might also say, in terms of this discussion, from the mass consciousness. And we're all programmed by the mass consciousness.
I think, yeah, we're not that far away, that's for sure.
And I think that was part of Maria's question, how do I know my desires are God's desires? Or I'll rephrase that, our own inner divinity's desires. Or is it some program that we unconsciously have playing that we have learned growing up or in our culture from the media or whatever?
Well, see, therein comes the word pili na'i. Pili na'i. And that means trust. Trust. So we come to that place of, do we choose to trust? And I look at it this way. When we're children, one of the things that children are taught here is that at that time of reasoning, the elders will say to us that we have a pattern of aloha. We have a pattern of aloha. And that pattern of aloha is in both hands. And so they'll have the children spell ALOHA with every letter to stand for a finger. For instance, the thumb is A, the index finger is L, the next finger to that is O, and so on, HA. So there's 5 letters, 5 fingers on one hand for aloha, and they tell the children that if by chance they forget the pattern of aloha, then they can look at their next hand, and it also stands for ALOHA, aloha. And so as a child, you learn very quickly that aloha means love, because in our Hawaiian language, alo means the spirit or the presence or the knowledge. ALO also means knowledge and knowing. And it also means presence, so the present of spirit, alo. The ha means the breath of life, ha. So ALOHA is a positive reinforcement of all that is good. All that say, as you get older, you want to, you're not too sure if maybe something that you're thinking is aloha. And they'll tell you, well, look at your hand, and that which you're thinking, does it match the pattern in your hand? Yeah, and you're raised with this now as a child, okay? So you've already got a very strong connection to this love, to this aloha, and you size it up in your hand, and if it meets this vibrational energy that you feel from inside, and it meets where you can look at your hand and say, okay, does it match up to ALOHA, aloha? If it does, you'll know it. If it doesn't, you'll also know it.
I'm practicing that as you're describing it. It's wonderful. It's I think they use this technique, so to speak, in neurolinguistic programming, because they'll teach you to have a certain good feeling that you want to have, and then anchor it in your physical body. That's the term they use.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what the elders have taught. Yes. exactly that. Mm-hmm.
That
And also the fact that one of the other things that a child learns very quickly is that they are given a basket. You know, people, some have referred to it as the bowl of light. Well, people are given, or children, I know when I was little, one of the aunties, has made a basket, La Hala basket, because we don't have glass or something like that, say for bowls, but they make you this basket. And this basket is woven just such to where light, it's strong enough to hold things, but it also has what we call windows in the weave. So that you can also, if you hold the basket up to the light, you can see light beams coming through the basket. Mm-hmm. So as a youngster, I remember this so vividly, so often. We would have my grandfather or one of the elders would call the children together, and we would have what we call the Pono Circle, which is part of that Ho'oponopono Keala, which is the Pono circles. And the Pono circles means the circle of excellence. Because Pono means excellent, rightness, And so we would have these Pono circles, and all the children were given the basket, and during the week, if you found yourself, this was training for the kids, you found yourself that you did say something that wasn't aloha, the reinforcement was you had to put a beach pebble, a pebble in your basket. Then at the end of the week, you sit around in a circle, and depending on how many pebbles you had in that basket, everyone had to bring their baskets out into the open, and then you had to explain what each pebble stood for.
It's a wonderful form of group therapy.
Oh, definitely. So, being as I was such a, what in Hawaiian we call niele meaning a very inquisitive child. Well, when you have a very inquisitive child, that child is, bound to get into things, as I did. And because of that inquisitiveness, I would always have to put, another pebble in the basket. So I always ended up with the basket most full, most full of pebbles. And when you lift that basket up, it blocked all the light. It blocked all the light out of the, because it was so full of rocks. You blocked out the positive light. So I had to say what I got this from and what I got that from, and oh boy, so that the reinforcement was that the next week you made sure you wouldn't have that many pebbles in the basket, if any at all.
Well, the wisdom of that, Auntie, is carried over in the 12-step program because you have to take inventory and make amends. And,
exactly.
I mean, in every tradition, somehow you have to confess if that's true.
Yeah.
But you bring it into the light and bring it back to the light. We all make miscreations, so we have to constantly be weeding our garden, so to speak, and pulling out the creations and bringing the light back in.
Oh, yeah. My grandfather would always say, okay, now that we've all, reinforced this and we all know what this is about, okay. And then he would do a chant, a prayer, and we would all be a part of that. And then he would say, okay, lift your baskets and just simply turn it over.
Fresh start.
And when you turned it over, you dumped all the rocks out of the basket, you looked at it in the light, and all the beams came through, and he would say, this is who you are.
So there was no opportunity for guilt to fester?
Oh, absolutely not, because that would mean another pebble in your basket. So no, you never had that. Oh, no, absolutely not. It was always about learning it and then blessing it.
And living in the present moment.
And living in the present. Absolutely. And you learn that as a young child. Mm-hmm.
I would like to remind everyone that Auntie's website is alohaspiritauntie.com. And this is Pat Crosby, and the website that this beautiful audio interview will be on is iloveforgiveness.com. Auntie, I was wondering if you could touch a little bit more. You have a lineage going back 9 generations. Would that be correct to describe it that way? If you could talk a little bit about this wonderful lineage that you are the current living holder of.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, Ka'ivi Kumaokekua Kalani, when I say 9 generations, we're counting from him, but of course it goes way, way beyond him. But him as the how shall we say, this century, the ancestor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Ka'ivi Kumaokekua Kalani was once a chief in a sense of one who led the people. So chief doesn't mean the same thing, that say it meant in many other places. Chief was just another way of saying someone who led or was a leader in something, like a kahuna. Okay, he was the kahuna. Say, back in his time, and this was just before the coming of the missionaries. So the missionaries that arrived here in Hawaii in 1820s. Ka'ivi Kumaokekua Kalani, meaning again the backbone strength of the heavenly chief, was a leader of the Hawaiian spirituality. So he was the keeper of the ancient value system, if you will, which was all about the aloha. The rituals and things that went with that, certain chants, certain things that was done in a physical deed that became evidence for how, say, one worked spiritually as well with the environment. Say, for instance, we spoke earlier about my grandfather's and Uncle Robert's experience with the lava flow coming from, uphill and running down into the ocean, and how their properties was not destroyed by this flow, this downward flow of lava. Well, for us, that's evidence of how the environment and how one who is and considers themselves a leader, in a sense, one who is respectful of the environment, etc. And so in both these two cases, it was about the energy and the belief system. In other words, both of them, my grandfather as well as Uncle Robert, believed that Pele did not need, was not there to destroy their property. However, if for whatever reason she needed to have their property, then they were more than willing to say, okay, not a problem there either. And they meant it. They meant it. So they were just a part of this dynamic. Okay, and so because of it, you could say that Pele cooperated. She didn't need to make an example of them or their land in such a way by taking it, but simply, moving around them. So there is this evidence of one being in oneness with their environment. Right? So that is a kind of evidence, say, in the spiritual sense, that our belief system, our alohas, come from. So Ka'ivi Kumaokekua Kalani was a messenger as well, if you will, that helped the people to stay connected, to stay connected. Those, by the way, that chose to stay connected. Okay, he was a supporter of that divinity, of that connection. Now, interestingly enough, during that time, just before 1820, before the arrival of the missionaries, um, came a huge experience, if you will, came another experience here in the islands, especially here on the Big Island, to where the Queen or the Kamehameha, King Kamehameha, um, changed address. In other words, on his deathbed, he supposedly appointed his favorite wife to be a regent, a holder of the lands of Kamehameha here in the islands, the monarchy, if you will, until such time as the second Kamehameha, King Kamehameha, was old enough to take responsibility, to take responsibility of the islands, etc. So she, in turn, had decided that after the passing of Kamehameha, that she wanted certain things changed in the dynamics of the culture. And at that time, again, we're talking about 1819. At that time, one of the things that Kaha'umanu, Queen Kaha'umanu, wanted to change is to be able to eat at the same table with the menfolk. This was considered forbidden during the time of Kamehameha. Now, let me clarify that. Kamehameha was more Tahitian-like in his following of a belief system, and Tahitian-like meaning more warlike. So this is what happened during his takeover of all the islands, etc., etc. There was more of a Tahitian warlike influence upon Kamehameha, which was not the place of the Aloha spirit. You know, it wasn't the place of the Hawaiians' spirituality per se, but it was Kamehameha's way to in the part of our culture during his time as chief. So one of the forbidden laws, or one of the laws that he put out here, was that men and women had to eat at separate tables, per se. Well, his own queen, after his death, decided to change that. In doing so, her advisors said that if she had done this, then the people would see her weakness rather than her godness, you know, that she would be one of the flesh rather than one of the gods. So they decided, because she said she really didn't care what the people thought, that she was going to do this, and she wanted them to pass the word through the kingdom that this law was no longer in effect. So instead of them doing that, and the fact that they couldn't convince her otherwise, they convinced her that yes, they can get this done, but to save her reputation, so to speak, that they might as well do away with a lot of the other beliefs as well, so that way the people would still think of her as the goddess, etc., etc. So again, she didn't care about that. She just wanted to sit at the table and enjoy her menfolk because she had many lovers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, many lovers. So anyway, that being the case meant that they were going to get rid of practically everything in their belief system, just so she would not be uncovered as, instead of a goddess, that kind of stuff. So when that happened, that meant some of the belief system and the spirituality as well. And that caused my ancestor, Kaiwi Kekuaokalani, and his followers to rebel against such movements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in that time frame of rebellion, which was considered battle, the last battle of Hawaiians against Hawaiians, and I'm not talking about the common people. This was warriors against warriors,
Mm-hmm.
which did not have anything to do with the common people.
Mm-hmm.
So warriors against warriors. And in that battle, Keivi Kumaokekuaokalani changed address. He lost the battle.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, a lot of the elders who had stayed hidden in the caves with the young children had to flee that side of the island, which was on the Kona side of the island, and come through the mountainous, treacherous land of Pele, land of the volcano and the fires, etc. And they were able to make their way this way. And it was for the first time that the people who, many of them are the descendants, from where I come from, yeah, they were my ancestors, and they used their ancient belief system, meaning that oneness with the environment, and they called upon Pele to block the warriors from coming over the volcano side, into the Puna district. And so Pele did just that. In fact, there are petrified footprints in the volcano area that is said to have been some of these warriors who were burned when Pele was called in to help the people cross the mountain to come over into the Puna side. So it was said that the power of Kaiwi Kumaokekuaokalani was what affected this event to work in the people's favor, with Pele being part of the warrior, if you will, to help defend the people and allow them to clear passage onto the Puna side of the island. And thus, generations later, is the bloodline that I come from.
And
so our working with the environment, our working with beyond the human dimension, if you will, is not a strange thing in people like my family. No, we've always connected to what is a part of us. In other words, we're not simply recognizing the human side, but we recognize our divinity.
So you as a human lineage holder, you have conscious communication with your ancestors on the other side?
Oh, absolutely. 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 And I'm not saying that it's just me. I'm saying that as a culture of people, this is not unusual.
Right.
Yeah, this is not unusual.
Well, I think healers and channelers face the same thing if they're coming out of a Western-type tradition, too, where suddenly the veils drop down and we're in communication with spirits and angels and helpers and guides. And so our work is to keep ourselves clear
Sure.
and open to the truth and humble in the light of the greatness of the spirits we work with, and do our best to be of service, and those who are called upon to be messengers to deliver their messages clearly and succinctly and completely with due diplomatic humanness, because delivering them can be quite an art, so the person can.
And you see, the thing about it is, too, is that I know that this is not, say, just me or just the lineage that I come from, but it's really about all of us being in the same canoe, and that all of us have this divinity, and that the only difference is the fact that, again, some of us know how to paddle the canoe. Some of us aren't sure about the canoe. And some of us have forgotten that we were once great paddlers of the canoe.
And I think that's the gift that the indigenous elders have held on to, which is now being brought back out to the complete. What I don't know, say this, the greater mass of humanity who is waking up to their multidimensional capabilities.
Absolutely, because that's how we're going to all be able to, do this shift, this great dynamic shift that needs to be done on this planet. Avatar, I don't know if you had a chance to see the movie Avatar.
I'm getting ready to go. Several of my friends have gone. I've been watching little clips on YouTube. So, one day.
Oh, great. Well, I was so hoping that Avatar would, that those who produced it, and, responsible for getting this onto the screen, that they would take it into that next level where it didn't have to go through a war, that we could all step up to it and go, all right, let's make the experience different this time. Let it not be about guns and war and takeover, etc., etc., etc. Here we have, this is like such a beautiful moment because their messages is so great. I loved it in this movie, And when they didn't do that, I said, okay, that's it. Where is Spielberg? Because he's been sort of in hiding. Nobody has heard from him in a long time, and he seems to be the one that will bring up the next level, like he did with E.T. and Encounters of the Third Kind, and all of this. He seems to be the one that's brave enough to take us into that next shift visually. So I'm hoping that he has something he's working out, because we're already, there's, so many of us that know that we're already in the there that we've been looking to be in.
Yes.
The there is here.
Yes.
We're already in it. So it would be nice to have that support through the film media.
Well, my friends
as well.
My friends who follow these things tell me that Steven Spielberg is consciously working with higher level intelligence. So whatever he brings in is a gift to the planet, as you have suggested. So,
right. So there it is.
It's been wonderful having this opportunity to talk at length with you, Auntie. And we have one question still hanging here.
Oh, sure.
So it seems like a good one to kind of wrap up here. It comes from Lynn in New Jersey, and she says, if there was only time for one message to the world, Auntie, what would it be?
Reconnect to love. Let's do love.
Aloha.
Aloha. Absolutely. Bringing that which is already on the table. It's already on the table.
Well, thank you so much, Auntie. My heart is light and my spirit is soaring from all the wonderful adventures we've shared here in this conversation, and you opening the doors in our hearts and minds to so many beautiful aspects and facets of the human experience. And your website again is alohaspiritauntie.com, where you can hear and read some of her teachings, and she has a book list and all kinds of treasures. alohaspiritauntie.com. And this is Pat Crosby from iloveforgiveness.com, and we're wishing you all a heavenly, bright, and light life. Mahalo, which is thank you, and aloha. E aloha mai mai e iki e nahi e aloha mai ho I mai e I mai e aloha uane. Love to your spirit greatness.